Hello, I'm Bob Weeks for Wichita Liberty TV, your weekly source for news, analysis, and commentary about Kansas and Wichita government and public affairs. Broadcast on KGPT, Great Plains Television, Sunday mornings at 8:30, repeated at 4 in that afternoon, and then at 4:30 you get to watch the previous week's episode a second time. Also, check the Voice for Liberty, that's my site at wichitaliberty.org. You'll find Wichita Liberty TV there, and all the other content that I and others produce on nearly a daily basis. So today we're continuing to look at our candidates for the next governor of Kansas, and our guest this week is Kansas Secretary of State Kris Kobach, who is also the Republican nominee for that office, having defeated the current governor, Jeff Caldwell, in a very narrow primary margin there. And his running mate for lieutenant governor is Wichita businessman Wink Hartman. So, Secretary Kris Kobach, welcome to Wichita Liberty TV.
Great to be back with you.
I want to remind us that the last day to register to vote is October 16th, and then the election is Tuesday, November 8th. Just a real quick question. A month or two ago, the United States Supreme Court ruled that all states, I think most of them, can force out-of-state retailers to collect sales tax on goods shipped to Kansas. And some people are saying, oh, we're going to make like a lot of money off of that. But the Supreme Court doesn't say you have to tax. They leave that up to the states. So what would your position be on that?
Well, my view is we have to be cutting taxes, not necessarily looking for ways to. If there is a way to do that easily and to equalize, then absolutely. But, by and large, if there's a tax inequity, I would rather see us cutting the sales taxes here than hoping that somehow we can collect taxes out of state. And you do sometimes see that, by the way, because there are some businesses, some industries where it's almost, just give you an example, recreational vehicles, ATVs, motorcycles, it's almost impossible for our in-state dealers to compete with out-of-state dealers because Kansas forces the Kansas dealer to collect taxes on the Oklahoma person who comes over to buy. So he has no incentive to do so, but the Kansas person goes over and purchases in Oklahoma and pays no sales tax. So there are some inequities there, and I definitely want to solve those inequities, but my instinct is not to raise taxes or to try to reach out and collect more.
And I think a lot of out-of-state retailers collect the sales tax anyway. I know it seems like they charge sales tax on all my Amazon purchases, so it may not be as big as an issue. But I know a big issue is the next governor of Kansas is going to have to preside over redistricting, I believe, after the 2020 census, then a year or two later. Last time around, Kansas failed to do that. The legislature could not come to an agreement, and so the federal courts drew the districts. What would you like to see for redistricting next time in Kansas? So independent commission, or let the legislature do it?
I think the legislature, it's okay, and the legislature has in the past done it and done it well, as long as they're not trying to gerrymander districts. The one silver lining of the, and I was Secretary of State when the courts did this, the one silver lining of having the courts do it is they did actually try to create relatively boxy districts that were not
boxy,
as opposed to the ones that get stretched out and are clearly gerrymandered to keep one jurisdiction or one area in a district or another. So we're now back to a much more normal map. And I think the legislature should be able to do this. I mean, they got bogged down in literal turf protection, keeping turf in one district versus another district. I would hope that they could get it done. It's their constitutional responsibility to get it done. We have enough areas where our federal courts, and it is a federal court panel that did this, where our federal courts are getting involved in areas that arguably are not within the judiciary's prerogative. Hopefully the legislature can get it done. As governor, I'll lean on them to get it done because it is a legislative responsibility.
Well, I know that the legislators last time really hated it. So many of them were thrown in, two incumbents in a new district. I think there was one where there were even 3 Republican incumbents thrown into one. And I thought, if they don't like it, there's probably some good that came out of that. Maybe, I don't know. But anyway, so that redistricting will be important, I think. We're almost out. We got a minute left in this segment. Karl, did you have a follow-up?
Well, I'm going to go in an entirely different direction. There's been talk about expanding Obamacare through Medicaid expansion. Most of the candidates have been talking about we need to expand government involvement in healthcare. Is this something you support or oppose?
I'm of the three major candidates, I'm the only one who says we should not be expanding Medicaid or CanCare in Kansas. Every state that has expanded it has found that the costs were far in excess of what were initially projected. They're projecting $1.1 billion in Kansas, but I know it's going to be a multiple of that. In Ohio, it was twice what they projected. In Illinois, it was 4 times what they projected. We do not need to be expanding the welfare state and transforming this from something that is supposed to protect those who have medical needs and there's really no other way that they can take care of themselves into a welfare program for able-bodied adults. And so I am opposed to expanding it.
Well, I think you said something there, welfare state. Sometimes the people who support this pitch this as part of the, what am I thinking, a security blanket, the safety blanket, safety net of social welfare programs, like unemployment insurance, I think falls into that category. But I do think, I agree with you that expanding Medicaid is really an expansion of the welfare state, and once you do that, it's very, very difficult to claw that back. Let's take a moment for our first commercial break today. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back to Wichita Liberty TV. I'm Bob Weeks with your co-host Karl Peterjohn. Our guest today, Kansas Secretary of State Kris Kobach, the Republican Party nominee for Kansas governor. Just realized I said that Mr. Kobach defeated Jeff Caldwell in the primary. It wasn't that, it was Jeff Collier, our governor. He's facing Jeff Caldwell and others in the current election now. So there's been some controversy. I got a press release from your campaign today criticizing the Democratic nominee, Senator Laura Kelly, for her claim that you believe schools are overfunded in Kansas right now. So I guess a bigger question, she says, and others say too, that school funding in Kansas has been slashed. First of all, is that true? And how do we determine what is the right level of spending on schools in Kansas? Okay, well, first let's get to the first point you mentioned.
Yeah, the Laura Kelly campaign has been running an ad in the Wichita area in which she states, in her speaking to the camera in her own voice, she says, Kris Kobach actually says our schools are overfunded, and that's the exact word she uses, overfunded. I've never used that term. I've never made that claim. What I have said is that our schools, the money that goes to our schools disproportionately goes to administrative and management costs rather than instruction in the classroom. And I've made that point again and again. We're spending about 53 cents of every dollar in the classroom on instruction when we should be, in my view, spending 75 cents of every dollar in the classroom on instruction. And so the Kelly campaign is basically advertising a lie that somehow I said that schools are overfunded, which would imply, if that were true, that I was somehow claiming we should be cutting the budgets on schools. To your second question, that's another falsehood that she's been making, not in this ad, but generally stating that our school budgets have been slashed. Actually, they've been growing consistently. Looking just in the 2015 to the present period, the 2016, 2017, 2018 budgets all saw significant increases in K-12 education funding. The point I've been making throughout this campaign is if we just focus on the bottom line, which is what the courts seem to want to do and what the Democrats seem to want to do, they just keep saying, let's look at the total dollar amount and just shovel more money in and just assume that things are better. My point is, let's not be so superficial. Let's look at where we're spending the money. If you just keep shoveling money in without caring where it's spent, you're probably not going to get any significant improvement. And indeed, that's what we've been doing. For the past 20 years, the amount of money spent in K-12 education has doubled. We should be getting return on that investment, but we're not. Test scores have been flat for that entire period. So my point is, when we spend the money, let's have some input on where it's spent. Let's not spend it on hiring 3 more new assistant principals. Let's not spend it on building a Taj Mahal administrative building like we have all over this state. And Shawnee Mission is a notable example where they've got this magnificent thing that looks like a Fortune 500 corporate headquarters for the administrators. Mm-hmm. Let's spend the money on teacher salaries, on computers, on books, on things that directly affect children's education. And I don't think anyone can quarrel with that unless, as my Democrat opponent is doing, she twists it to say something I did not say at all.
But the Kansas media often repeats the claim from the government school spending advocates that we're only spending about $4,000 per pupil per year by the state. And the state's actually spending over 50% of their general fund budget on K-12.
Yeah.
The courts are saying more needs to be spent. How much should the state be spending, and how much is the state spending for that matter? Is this $4,000 figure that's thrown out realistic?
Well, so if you look at all components of money spent on the student, we're up to, on average, and of course different school districts have a different total, but on average we're up to about $14,000 per student in Kansas.
Per year?
Per year. So that's a pretty significant amount of money being spent. It's, if you, again, looking at federal, state, and local components together, and the state component has been growing. And so, and I am not saying that, I'm not in any way, as Laura Kelly is suggesting, saying that I'm objecting to increased or saying that there's too much. What I'm saying is, if we just keep on spending more and more and more without looking at where the money's going, then we should not be surprised if results and outcomes don't improve. Let's actually look at where the money's going. As we're shoveling this money in, let's not just turn away and walk away from it. Let's say, okay, now where's that dollar going? Where's this dollar going? I think it's inexcusable that the school districts are spending only 53 cents of every dollar in the classroom. And when I started making this point and making this proposal, they immediately said, oh, we can't possibly spend more. That's, how could we possibly do that? Well, I can tell you how I can possibly do that. You can start looking at the number of staff, that administrative and management staff. In the last 20 years, in the last 25 years, the number of students in Kansas schools has gone up 10%. The number of teachers in Kansas schools has gone up 17%. But the number of management and administrative personnel has gone up 40%. So clearly, they are not spending the money on instruction in the classroom. They're spending it on hiring redundant, excessive numbers of administrative personnel. I'd rather see that money spent giving the teacher a raise, hiring another teacher for the school, instead of 2 Wichita high schools having 5 assistant principals each. Maybe they should have only 1 or 2 assistant principals and have a few more teachers, or give merit pay to the best teachers in the school. How about that for a better allocation of the money?
Yeah, merit pay won't get you any votes from the teachers union, I don't think there. But anyway, let's take our second commercial break for today. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back again to Wichita Liberty TV. Bob Weeks, your host, co-hosting Karl Peter John. Our guest today, Kansas Secretary of State Kris Kobach, candidate for governor. So this year we have 2 independent candidates on the ballot, and that's not really an easy thing to accomplish. You have to gather a lot of signatures. One independent candidate, not well known, the other fairly well known. And they say things like, I want to represent the people and not just a party. I'm a political independent for one simple reason. I don't believe the current system is working for the American people or the state of Kansas. And we have a situation where there are some Republicans who have endorsed your opponent and not you. So what's the deal with the 2-party system in Kansas? Is it working? Do we need to change it in some way? How do you feel about that?
Well, let me say, first of all, I'm running against 2 Democrats. I'm running against the official Democrat, Laura Kelly, who won the Democrat primary, and then I'm running against the de facto Democrat, Greg Orman, who was the de facto Democrat who ran against U.S. Senator Pat Roberts in 2014.
And in that campaign, the actual Democrat did withdraw in favor of...
Chad Taylor withdrew after winning the Democrat primary for U.S. Senate in 2014. so the Democrat Party could all line up behind Greg Orman, whose views align perfectly with the Democrat Party. He's pro-choice, he's for gun control, he's not for cutting taxes, and you just go down the list of issues, and he lines up with the Democrats, which is why he was the de facto Democrat candidate in 2014 for U.S. Senate, and now he's a de facto Democrat for governor, and that's also explains why the Laura Kelly campaign has been so eager to try to disqualify him right after the submission of signatures. And they realize too that there are two Democrats in this race. They both have a very progressive agenda, and so it's interesting in the debates. If you watch some of the candidate debates, you'll have me on one side, and then you'll have Orman and Kelly basically taking the same position on the other side. They're a position between the two liberals that they share. Is the two-party system somehow in need of changing? Well, first of all, the two-party system is really a product, not only in Kansas, but all across this country, a product of our electoral system. And our electoral system is a first-past-the-post single-member district system. Not to get too deep in the weeds in political science, but if you have...
I think is that Dervinger's law or something that says that type of voting system almost certainly breeds two
parties. Yeah, because if you don't have if you had multi-member districts like some European countries have, where you have 5 different representatives of the district, well then smaller parties can bid for one of those 5 seats. But here you need 51%, or you need a plurality to win a single-member district, and that means that large parties will do better, parties that can broaden their appeal as much as possible, and that yields a two-party system almost mathematically, and that's why we have it in America. If we wanted a multi-party system, we would go toward a more European style of allocating districts. So, look, the two parties do adjust over time. Look at the Democrats. I mean, goodness sakes, 50 years ago, the Democrats, they had, well, let's go 60 years ago, the Democrats elected John F. Kennedy, who cut taxes, who was very aggressive in the world in defense, and nowadays the Democrat Party would say, that they want taxes increased, and they want a more pacifist, withdrawn posture in the world. His party doesn't exist anymore. Their party has completely shifted to something else. It's much more of a party of welfare and a much more a party of group alliances. And the Republican Party has shifted too, but I think our shift makes a lot more sense.
Well, we've cut taxes at the federal level. You've advocated tax cuts, but Kansas Policy Institute is holding meetings around the state with legislators, pointing out the fact that over the next 4 years they're projecting a $4 billion spending hole that is going to have to come up with revenue to fund it. And we've had massive tax increases in the last few years. Just last year, the governor's veto, Governor Brownback's veto of income tax increases on both business and individuals was overridden. Where do you see us going forward to address this spending problem, especially in light of the fact that the courts seem to be dominating most of state spending under school finance?
So I'm the only candidate in this race who's saying Kansas does not have a revenue problem. It has a spending problem. Right after the 2012 tax cuts, spending continued on a linear path. New record in 2013 of $6.1 billion state general fund, then $6.2 billion in 2015, $6.3 billion in 2017, and then the curve went on an exponential rise, and we're almost up to $7 billion now. We have a spending problem. Wink, Hartman, and I are going to go in office right away and start cutting spending. And we'll do that the way I did at the Secretary of State's office, through natural attrition. The baby boomers are retiring. We don't need to replace those positions. We can shrink the size of personnel in government, and we can shrink some programs that are not effective return on the taxpayer's investment, and we'll do it right away, because we've got to shrink spending. We are the high tax state in the 5-state area. We've got to cut our taxes, and that means you don't put the cart before the horse. You don't cut the taxes while spending's going up. You get the spending under control, you start cutting spending right away, and then we can reduce taxes, and we can avoid a deficit.
And I think even Sam Brownback realizes that the failure to really rein in spending was what led to, I guess, the failure of the Brownback tax plan. I mean, I don't think cutting taxes is ever the wrong thing to do, but if you don't trim your expenses to match, then you have a problem.
You have to. And let me add one point. Kansas is number 3 in America in the number of state and local government employees per capita. That is, I think, statistical proof that we can cut spending and we can shrink the size of government. Indeed, we must shrink the size of government.
And some people tell me, because I have that on my website, the data from
Tax Foundation has that data. I
yeah,
know.
the Bureau of Labor Statistics, I think. But so people say, no, Kansas is a large state with a relatively small population. That's why we have so many state and local employees. Well, I did the regression analysis against other small, sparsely populated states, and that's just not true. There's very little relationship. Anyway, Secretary Kobach, we do need to take our last commercial break, so let us do that, and we'll be right back. Well, welcome back to our last segment of Wichita Liberty TV for today. Bob Weeks, your host, Karl Peterjohn, and our Secretary of State, Kris Kobach, who is also running for governor at this time. So we've been asking all the candidates about their opinion on marijuana, and I think it's really two questions. There's the medical use of it, and then there's the recreational use. But I think I've heard you say that one leads to the other. Is that your opinion?
Yeah, I'm opposed to legalizing the recreational use of marijuana. I do agree that there are medical benefits to the CBD component of marijuana, but until we find out some way to legalize medical use that doesn't inexorably lead to recreational use, which has happened in every state that has done so, then I'm going to resist legalizing for medical purposes. You know, and science is ultimately, you know, getting us there. The FDA is about to approve a pill form of CBD, so hopefully we can realize the medical benefits without having to go down that road.
One of the big issues in Kansas, and it goes to the earlier point from our last segment about government employment, is property tax lid.
Yeah.
There's a lot of loopholes in it. What's your position for, at the moment it exists for cities and counties, but it doesn't cover schools and townships and other governmental units. It doesn't cover the state. The state has a 21.5 mil statewide mill levy. Some folks want to increase that too, but in terms of a tax lid, what's your feelings on that very important issue for local property taxpayers?
So you are correct. The property tax lid, which imposes the requirement of having a popular approval referendum to approve the tax hike for certain increases, is filled with so many exceptions that the exceptions swallow the lid, so to speak. And so I do think we need to tighten the exceptions so that property tax mill levies do more often have to face a popular vote. And just give you an example, in very blue Douglas County, there was a proposed, it wasn't a property tax increase, but it was a proposed sales tax increase to fund jail expansion and a facility, another facility to deal with offenders or people with mental disabilities who may get involved in criminal activity. Anyway, you would think that in Douglas County and Lawrence that would pass easily. It didn't. The people of this state, including people in Douglas County, are oftentimes thinking we are overtaxed, and they will resist tax increases, and that's why oftentimes people who are lobbying for city units of government or counties will sometimes say, oh, we can't possibly have any we can't have any requirements of referendum to have popular approval, because they know the people oftentimes don't want to spend more. And to your point, I want to reiterate one thing I've been saying is a central part of my campaign. It's not just the mill levy, it's the appraisals. And in many counties in Kansas, the reappraisal process has been a stealth tax hike. Double-digit increase after double-digit increase. Many of your viewers, I'm sure, have seen 12%, 15%, 18% increases in 1 year in their residence or in their commercial property. And it is a way that taxes are increased without anybody having to take a vote. And so I have been pushing hard for a 2% limit in the appraised value of any property per year, and I think we should not do reappraisals every year. I think we should do them every 2 years like Missouri does, or even every 3 years, and have no more than 2% in any year in that period. That would give property owners some stability, and for people who are retired, it would give them an opportunity to forecast, okay, how much money is it going to cost to live in my house that I've lived in for decades? Because many older people are being priced out of their home by the county appraiser.
Well, I think living in your home, another major cost for a lot of people is electricity.
Yes.
I think you've had some opinion on that.
Yeah, so residential electricity costs in Kansas, these figures are a few months old now, but they're still pretty close. It's 13.4 cents per kilowatt hour in Kansas. But what many Kansans may not know, unless you look at your friends' utility bills in neighboring states, the average in the states around us is 10.9 cents. 13.4 in Kansas, 10.9. We pay 25% more almost in electricity in Kansas.
Well, part of that, isn't it, we've got state mandates for renewable, or what I like to call politically correct power. And do you favor removing some of those mandates so we can get more efficient natural gas and some of the other less expensive forms of energy?
Absolutely. There shouldn't be a politically correct favored form of power. And you know, the mandates, if I am correct, I think are now no longer in place. They're targets. But even so, we have to find out why Kansans are paying more, and that means that the KCC, Kansas Corporation Commission, needs to look at this, need to be protecting the consumer. We need to be asking why. It's not more expensive to generate power in Kansas than it is in Oklahoma or Missouri. Why are we paying so much more? And this is a huge burden on, you know, most people are paying hundreds of dollars every month on their electricity bills. And I bet most people would probably be a little bit disappointed to know that in a neighboring state, they're paying $50 less or $80 less per month.
Do you know if that discrepancy is also for commercial accounts too?
Yes, the numbers are slightly, in commercial, I have the numbers in my folder here, but I'll just give you a roundabout estimate. In commercial, it's about 18 or 19% higher in Kansas. So again, there's this discrepancy. We pay more for electricity, both residential and commercial, significantly more than neighboring states.
Well, it might be the fact that just down the street, Westar donated $1.4 million to a city park. So I don't know, maybe that's something we could look at. Anyway, Secretary Kobach, Karl Peter Jun, we're out of time for today. They're going to be turning out the lights in a moment. So thanks so much for appearing today. This is Bob Weeks for Wichita Liberty TV, and we'll be back again next week.